Father in heaven, if there is truth to be found on the earth, please lead me to it. That night I felt, I felt something really different. So I was raised in the Catholic Church, in a good Catholic family in a small farming community with a large LDS population in Northern California, Gridley, California. And went to parochial schools, and when I was 14 I entered the Catholic Seminary. I decided I was going to be a priest. And one of the things we were asked to do on a regular basis was to pray and ask God if we were indeed called to serve Him in that way as a priest. And so I took that pretty seriously. But I was still serious about my belief in God and my feeling of, what could I possibly do with my life that would compare to what He could do with it if I just decided to let Him. And so even as a 13, 14-year-old kid, that was kind of my attitude. So I always felt good about the decision to be there. It was a great experience. Senior year, I went back to public schools, mostly because Father Bruce thought I wasn't really priesthood material at 16, so he wanted me to have a little more experience and before I made that decision. So I was excited to go back to the college section of the seminary program, and this was in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. But everything changed, and now when I prayed to know if this was the right direction and the right path, there was definitely a stupor of thought, which was really difficult for me to deal with because this had been my dream since I was 11, 12-year-old kid. I didn't have any other direction in mind. And so I really began to feel that this was not what the Lord had in mind for me anymore. So that was in the fall of 1969. At the end of that semester in December, I went home and started, enrolled in some classes at the junior college in my community, but I still felt I had no direction. And so one night, it was in mid-January, and as I normally did, I knelt by my bedside and said my prayers. That night, I felt I felt something really different, is all I can say, and I said my prayer was different than anything I'd ever said before, and I really felt the Spirit kind of prompting me what to say, and this is what I said: Father in heaven, if there is truth to be found on the earth, please lead me to it. I got an immediate response, unforgettable, undeniable response, which kind of shocked me at first. Sure. I'd never had that strong a spiritual impression before. But the Spirit made it very clear to me that my prayer had been heard and would be answered in a specific time frame, 2 years, that it would happen in 2 years. And I used to hang out with some kids. We were a very eclectic group, but people of faith from different backgrounds. I was the Catholic one, another friend was born-again evangelical Christian, another girl that was LDS. And growing up in Gridley, I knew several LDS kids there. And so I just began to feel nudged. The Spirit was nudging me in a direction. And I remember finally feeling, I need to find out more. And so I went to, one of the guys I was in the band with was an inactive member of the church. So I was over at his house one day and I said, do you have a Book of Mormon I could borrow? And he said, no, he wasn't really into that much. But he got on the phone. His grandmother lived right across the street. 5 minutes later, she came sprinting across the street with a copy of the Book of Mormon, which she handed to me. And that night I began reading it. And I read through the whole book in about 2 weeks, and really felt convinced that there was truth there, and all the questions and the things that seemed to be missing in my study of the Bible, the pieces began to fall into place. So I went to a professor on campus who I knew was LDS and said, I read the Book of Mormon, I want to know more. So he put me in touch with the stake missionaries in my hometown, and they gave me the discussions, and I had a lot more questions than they had answers for. But I prayed repeatedly and got a strong confirmation that it was true. I told my parents I was going to get baptized. A couple months later, I started dating that LDS girl that In fact, I didn't tell her I was taking the discussions or anything about it because I didn't want people to think it was because of our friendship. But I did walk up to her one day in school and said, "You doing anything this Saturday?" So she thought I was going to ask her out, and she said, "What did you have in mind?" I said, "I'm getting baptized. I thought you might want to be there." So I was, she was there, and long story short, we were married about a little over a year later. Several months after I'd gotten baptized, and just thinking back to that experience I'd had in prayer, before, and realized the time frame. Almost 2 years to the day that I'd offered that prayer was the day I opened the Book of Mormon for the first time. So it was just a strong confirmation that not only had the prayer had been heard and answered, but in exactly the time frame the Spirit had told me it would.